Hello, everyone. This is your host, Akil Jabbar, and welcome back to another episode of SaaS District by Horizon Capital, where we partner with B2B SaaS companies and help them scale with both capital and our growth marketing playbook. This episode is also sponsored by our partners at Byldd, a startup development studio that helps early-stage startups build and launch scalable revenue-generating software businesses. Product development is often a challenge for non-technical founders who don't have a tech person internally. That's where Byldd comes in. They help founders build and launch their MVPs, test the market, and find product market fit. For $15K and roughly a month's work, Byldd will get your validated product up and out. We've all been burnt by the companies that promised this for years, but Byldd is focused on finding product market fit and will do that by keeping you away from the feature creep and escalating costs that do most initial products. They keep costs low with the block structure, but more importantly, they have already built great products on scope and on time for founders. Companies they've worked with have generated hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue, gotten into Y Combinator, or raised money at 8-figure valuations. If you have an idea and want to see it come to life as a product, head over to Byldd.com. That's BYLDD.com today. In today's episode, we'll be talking about how PR strategies support SaaS exits. Today, we have our guest, Lindsey Groepper, joining us. Lindsey is the president at BLASTmedia, a national B2B SaaS PR agency that takes a holistic approach to PR. Lindsey is responsible for new business development and helping oversee the strategic direction for the agency, where they focus on public relationships. Lindsey graduated from the University of Georgia with a Bachelor of Arts degrees in journalism and mass communications, with her specialty majoring in public relationships. So welcome, Lindsey. Super excited to have you on the SaaS District show today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
Cool. So let's get into today's episode where we're talking about public relationships. So let's talk hypothetically. If I'm a SaaS founder, I'm in the middle of an M&A process, right? I've got an LOI on the table. I've got an offer. I'm in the process. Maybe they're starting to do due diligence. When is the right time for me to start thinking about or writing that press release and announcement and letting people know, hey, we're about to get acquired here?
Yeah. You want to think about that as soon as it starts to happen. So it's never too early to start thinking about how or if you want to announce this publicly. Reason being, it is going to affect your employees and your customers. So never too soon to think about how this major move is going to affect those that matter, right? It's not just a you thing. So as soon as those conversations start to take hold and it is something that's going to happen, you want to start thinking about it. You want to talk to the acquiring company, figure out who their spokesperson is and how it's going to be jointly messaged. Every acquisition has a different why behind it. And so aligning on what that why is and aligning on what we want to publicly disclose, what we don't. But my advice would be then, once that release is approved by all parties, do not start pitching the media or do not issue that press release until ink dry, deal done, everything is finished. We have had clients make those mistakes in the past, which got into some hot water, where a deal was supposed to close on a certain day, did not. And we had to quickly go back to our press contacts and say, hold everything. So make sure that you do not distribute anything publicly until that deal is officially done, closed.
Okay, so money in the bank. Now you can celebrate and pop champagne and let the world know what happened. Got it. All right. And I guess why is it even important, right? I mean, like, okay, yeah, we closed the deal. I sold my company or I bought this company. I mean, that's between us. There's a mutual reason why there's value in that transaction. But why is it important for everyone else to know about this? I mean, who's going to benefit from this? Like, is it more of the seller or the buyer? And what can they expect from that release?
Yeah, every deal is different. It depends if you are being acquired and your brand is going away and you're being brought in under the larger company, or if your brand's going to continue to exist and you are an X company underneath this larger umbrella. So every deal is a little bit different. But the acquiring company will definitely want to promote the news because they're acquiring you for whatever reason that is, and whatever that why is. But ultimately, it goes back to who's affected by this acquisition. And it is going to be certainly you as the founder in a positive way, hopefully, but it is your employees and it is your customers. So they need to understand why this deal was done, how it's going to affect them. There's an internal comms play there as well. But in terms of what to expect from it, I want to manage expectations in terms of those of you who might be listening. We're like, okay, going to write this release and we're going to distribute it and we're going to all these stories, all these interviews are going to come in. There is a lot of acquisition news on any given day in the SaaS world.
Right.
So you do need to manage your expectations in that you may be an unknown brand already. So a large company acquiring you, unknown brand, isn't huge news. But what you can expect from that is coverage in three places. So definitely two areas you're likely to see stories run. One would be your local market press. That is a local success story. If you're based in Nashville, Tennessee, you're based in DC, you'll want to tell your local media this success story of your company as local company exits. So you should be able to get local coverage in your market. The other area you should be able to get coverage is your industry press. So whether you are a fintech, a health tech, a martech, an HR tech, those industry media outlets will likely have interest in the acquisition. The third segment where you can sometimes expect coverage is in those larger technology outlets. So if you're being acquired by a well-known brand, the tech crunches, the venture beats, the business insiders of the world that everybody wants, are more likely to cover that acquisition if it's a brand that they've heard of, or even if you are a smaller brand but have big name enterprise customers, that may be a way to get them on the hook as well. But it is a blip on the radar for the press. So that's where it comes with managing expectations, because as soon as your acquisition announcement goes live, there's 3 more in their inbox. And onwards we move. So it is not a PR strategy. It is one PR tactic to get coverage, but it is a fickle media market with a lot happening with SaaS M&As. So it will get coverage in local, industry, maybe national, and then on they move to the next story.
Got it. I mean, so I get a announcement for employees. I'm assuming they're probably aware of this, probably a little bit earlier on. Clients, I'm assuming this is probably at a point where this is news for them, which can be good or bad, and kind of adds to some. Okay, now we're going to be working with this new people or new team, and then obviously investors as well are also part of that equation. But from a SaaS company's perspective, okay, it's a blip on the radar, like you said, it's a one-time thing. I'm going to get all this coverage. People are going to hear about us. Is there a metric that really matters, or that you want to pay attention to whether you decide whether how this is an effective a campaign or launch, and how does success look like here for a SaaS company on that one small period here?
Sure. And I want to go back to something you mentioned about employees likely know beforehand. Oftentimes not, because what sometimes happens is if you have internal communication go out to your employees about the acquisition, you lose a bit of control on the message. So an employee may post about it on their personal social, and someone comments, media gets a hold of it, and all of a sudden, there it is. So oftentimes there's a built-out strategy around internal comms with employees coinciding with when the announcement goes out or around that same time. So if your announcement's going out at 9 a.m., maybe the internal comms goes out at 8, and then you figure out a strategy too for your clients. But it should be thought about very intentionally on how that information flow is going to go. And when it comes to measuring PR, this is literally an age-old question. And if anybody can figure out a way to accurately measure PR, I am all ears. We've been doing this a really long time. I would say to not set expectations and try and measure a single release. You are going to put a release over a paid wire service, a business wire, a PR news wire. That is an RSS feed, meaning that regardless of the release, it goes out to a network of established people or outlets that pick up that news, but that doesn't yield new stories. So when I tell you that I could put out a release about a fake startup and pay for it over a business wire, PR newswire, wire service, it will get the same amount of RSS feeds. So I wouldn't set expectations around a specific release or try and measure one announcement. PR is an investment in brand, and brands are certainly not built overnight. They're not built on one announcement, one moment in time. Brands are built over time. And you think about, and it's going to be different for each of us, but you think about a brand that you love. You love that brand because you connect with it. It makes you feel a certain way. And B2B SaaS companies are no different. When you have a massive category race, the one with the strongest brand wins. All things considered equal, right? Technology roughly does the same thing. You have about the same employees, decent marketing budget. The strong brand is going to win that category. So it's less about what did this one tactic yield, and more about investing holistically in a PR strategy that's going to help strengthen that brand. Because then you can start to monitor metrics over time that matter. Could be share of voice against your competitive set. How much are you talking about in the press versus them? It could be based on sentiment. It could be based on proactive opportunities where the press is contacting you as a leader in the space. How many maybe conferences your thought leaders are being asked to speak at. All of a sudden it becomes more of a credibility and perception driver, and how you measure that over time versus a one blip on the radar. How did it go or not go? There's a lot going on with the media any given day. And also you may put your announcement out on a day that was a really bad day. It might be, it could be a day that the publicly traded company in your space had a major announcement and you had no idea. And all of a sudden your announcements get completely trumped. So it's tough to set a metric of success around one announcement. So I would suggest looking at it holistically from a long-term investment strategy.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess we do acquisitions at Horizon Capital. We understand that, right? When we do this, I guess it's a lot of signaling as well, right? I mean, that shows that perceptions like, hey, we are doing deals. And I guess, from our result perspective, by announcing that, I guess just talking about ourselves, like, hey, look, these are the type of deals we're looking for. This is probably the size of the deal. This is probably the type of employees. And that kind of just gives a signal of other people who are thinking of maybe selling. Now they're like, hey, these people are doing acquisitions. And now they kind of find out who we are. And maybe they also want to start that discussion. So, but I guess that's kind of a secondary effect of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then, so if I'm whether a buyer or seller, say we're looking to do an acquisition, and we come to you like, hey, PR team, BLASTmedia, how can you help us? We want to get the most impact out of this message, right? What do you guys need to kind of craft that? Is it, the date that this is happening, the transaction value? What are the pieces that you usually see that are going to give the most impact on that message?
The biggest thing that we need to understand for maximum impact is who the hell cares. Why does this matter? Again, there is no shortage of M&A activity across the SaaS landscape. So the deal itself, the news itself is the what, and there are hundreds of whats that month. We need to understand the why. Who cares? What does this mean for the category? What does this mean for the acquiring company? What does this point to a larger trend? You can maybe pull in additional investment trends in that particular space or sector of technology, but there has to be a larger why behind the what for it to matter. Because we go through 20 to 30 between funding and acquisition announcements every year as an agency. And we always have to establish the who cares behind it. And if you don't know why it matters, you as the founder, or if you're the acquiring company, you get a problem, because you're also not going to be able to communicate that effectively to your employees and to your customers. But there has to be some sort of a news hook associated with it that points to some sort of a larger narrative outside of this happened, this transaction happened, because there's just too many of them for any one transaction to stand out, unless you're a great top 10 technology company where media will cover every time your CEO sneezes. You're going to have to figure out what is your unique message behind your acquisition.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't know why you're doing the acquisition, you probably shouldn't be doing it in the first place. But
right.
Do you suggest or recommend? Like, I've seen these. I usually like them when I see them, like, quotes and different quotes from the founder or from the seller of, like, around the transaction and speaking about what their experience is or how they see the future going in the vision of that transaction. Yeah,
typically we want to have, and if we're talking about a release in and of itself, you want to have quotes from both parties, and also have availability from both parties for potential interviews, if that's something that you're offering. Need to be on the same page on what types of details we're disclosing. And then if we are setting up interviews, you want to make sure that you have a clear messaging document so that all parties are on the same page about what we're disclosing, what we're not. You'll get questions about what does this mean for the employees? What type or department are you planning on keeping? There's overlap here. You have to be prepared to answer those questions. If from a financial standpoint, if you're not disclosing financials, even if you say that in the release and you take an interview, everyone's going to ask you to disclose financials, and they'll ask you 4 different ways to try and get you to finally cave and say it.
Yeah.
So being crystal clear with these spokespeople on how to bring that conversation back around to a place where you want to talk about versus harping on the financial details.
I mean, that's the meat of the equation, right? People want to know what percentage of, from the companies you work with actually, want to disclose it, whether it's or have to, I guess, maybe some publicly traded companies would have to disclose that, but the private companies, whether it's numbers or even, all right, we paid this valuation, range. Like you said, there's different ways of approaching it. It's like, what was the revenue? What was the valuation? What was the multiple? What did they raise at? Right. So then you can they try to get to a close number, right? So how many percentages?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And media's pretty savvy in the SaaS market. If they're covering M&A, they can do some reverse backward, back of the napkin math, and come to a fairly close conclusion. But if it's a private company making another private company acquisition, very rarely are any financials disclosed.
Yeah, I figured. Yeah, it makes sense. Cool. I want to chat about, you got this strategy you guys talk about called the stalking, stealing, and using people strategy. Can you talk us more about that and what that's about? I like it.
That's mine. My way of being provocative, right? Because it sounds a lot cooler than saying find people, leverage thought leadership. It's just a punchier way of saying that. So this is when it comes to developing a larger PR strategy and different tactics you can leverage as an internal person, right? If I'm working inside organization marketing and I maybe haven't brought on a PR firm yet, and I don't know where to start. I know we have really cool shit to talk about, but I can't pin anybody down to talk about it. I don't know who to pitch. So the press is answering my emails. The stalking, stealing, and using people is a strategy to move your PR strategy forward in a less obvious way. So the stalking side of the house is find media where they are. Media used to have a desk, and they used to have a published phone number. And you used to be able to literally call their desk phone until they answered, until you caught them. That is no more with the advent of a couple things, but specifically with COVID and working from home, no one has a desk phone or a published number anymore.
Sure.
So you certainly have an email address that you can work from. But the stalking part really lies in finding them on social media and hitting them when they are active. And because they are certainly tweeting about their stories, they are making comments on LinkedIn, and there's a way to hit them in a fairly real-time way when they're live online and on social media, where you can slide into their DMs and pitch them that way. So that is the stalking part. And we've had many a story that the initial correspondence started via Twitter DM. So that is a real way of getting in front of journalists and influencers. The stealing is stealing the thunder of your competitor news. It's one of our favorite things to do. Nothing pisses off a competitor more than when they have a big announcement and your CEO's perspective is included in the vast majority of that coverage. It is a good day at BLASTmedia when we're able to do that. But you should be monitoring your competitors. And understanding when they make announcements, you should be one of the first people to know because you're tracking them and you're constantly looking. So if your competitor announces an acquisition, or maybe there is a merger of 2 competitors, or they file for an IPO, or they have a huge round of funding, that's your opportunity to go out to the media that covered that space right away with perspective. What does that mean for the industry at large? What are the investors missing that they should be looking at instead? Where's the future of that category going? What does this mean for the customers? What are they going to get more or less? It's up to you how bold you want to be. But by going out very quickly and stealing the news cycle of your competitors, you're able to get in on a lot more opportunities and come across as a thought leader. And that is especially powerful when you are commenting on the news of a much larger competitor and your CEO perspective from a much smaller company is holding weight to comment on that large move by the competitor. So that's where the stealing comes in. And then the using people is you need to use the brains of your executives and your spokespeople internally, your subject matter experts. They don't have to be media trained. They don't have to be able to take an interview. But if you sit down with your chief product officer, your CTO, your head of sales, and you start to pick their brains, ask for 30 minutes, come with curated questions that are specific to them, you can pull out perspective that you can use in topics for pitching thought leadership or topics for trying to secure a guest post on a particular media outlet that's relevant to your industry. But use people. You don't have to be the one coming up with the ideas. You don't have to be the ones coming up with the topics and the talk tracks you're going to use. Talk to people and actually use their perspective, use their point of view to create pitch angles and thought leadership topics. So the stalking, stealing, using people is something that I encourage all internal folks to do if you're running PR or communications. But it's something that those three things we employ as an agency as well every day so that we're able to keep this consistent commentary for our clients in the news.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I'd like to, speak a little bit more about the stealing. That's I was going to ask you if you guys offer that because I feel like, obviously an M&A being an acquired or an exit is a one-time, for the journey of a founder, that's like once in a 7-year journey. Sure. But, I think, quite often there's probably a few people listening in who are founders and their competitors have raised a big round. And it's kind of like, all right, that makes us feel a little bit slow. We're falling behind. But there's a way to capitalize on that. And I think that's important. So, they can reach out to somebody like you to work with them because, I wouldn't even know how to wrap my head around how to approach that, right? So, I mean, if that's something you guys do, that's cool. Definitely learn the stealing strategy from you guys. Cool. Lindsey, this has been interesting. I mean, lots of good things here. I want to shift gears and move towards the personal rapid fire part of the interview. So, you ready for that?
Yes. Let's talk about me.
It's all about you, Lindsey. I love it. All right. What's one activity you enjoy outside of work that gets you into flow state?
Mine is through high intensity, high impact exercise. So I really like to work really hard. I go to a specific fitness studio that I love dearly, and it is literally my time to do a number of things. If I'm pissed off, it's a way to get that out. If I'm stressed, it's a way to calm down. And I'm highly competitive. So I like the atmosphere where I'm in it with a bunch of people and we're all just working our butts off. That is, I feel phenomenal during, but also that period after. So I feel very accomplished and I have that, we call it a flow state, but that feeling afterwards is my perfect state of mind.
You got all that serotonin flowing through you. It's just like, back in who I should be. What is it? Are you running? Are you cycling? What's your
I go to a studio called F45, which is a number of different, stations, it's athletic, but you're pushing a sled, you're doing box jumps, a lot of, if you were ever an athlete, a lot of stuff that you would have done in your training sessions. So I sure it's not for everyone, but I love it.
Cool. What's one piece of advice you wish you had known and would tell your, let's say 25-year-old self? You look young enough.
My 25-year-old self, I've just graduated. This will probably surprise some people. My advice would be that there will always be a job. And that your first job is not going to be the job. So don't stress out about it. Everyone's going to tell you have to have this plan. What are you going to do? What do you want to do when you grow up? Or what are you going to do after school? Go explore the world, take risks, because at 25, there will always be a job for you when you are done exploring the world. And it might not be the job, but very few people find the job at age 25. So do your thing, take risks before you have all your roots planted. And then we get back, or that may take you on a whole other journey, but find a job, work in that job for a year, maybe work in another job for a couple of years, and not dissimilar than dating. You will take something from every job and understand what's going to fill your cup, what you don't like doing, and you will use all of these qualifiers along the way till you finally find the job. But it ain't going to be your first one at 25. So don't worry about following a path. It is your time. It would be my time to go take risks and explore. And I say that because I was trying to follow a path and really worried about, taking the right job, and really was not, it didn't matter. I had a bunch of different jobs until I landed in the one that I've been in for 17 years. So that would be my advice, is go explore. The job market will still be here when you get back.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. To find what you want, you got to know what you don't want, right? And then you don't know.
Absolutely.
And at 25, you really don't even know what you want yet. So
no, very few people marry their first boyfriend or girlfriend.
That's true.
I mean, Mike Newman was my everything in sixth grade. We didn't quite make it. We didn't even make it to like the end of sixth grade. But yes, so your first job likely won't be your last either. Will not be your forever job, and it's okay.
Yeah, I'm still figuring it out today, so that's all right. It's all part of life. Cool. What are Lindsey? What are some of the biggest challenges you guys are facing in order to continue to grow BLASTmedia? Sorry, and meaning what keeps you up at night these days?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I'm going to preface this by saying our problems are the best type of problems you could have as a business right now. I don't want to sound ungrateful or naive to that our problems are good ones to have right now. We are fortunate that we have last year in 2021, we doubled our headcount and grew our revenue by 60% with no signs of slowing, which awesome. Where that's presented challenges is in the rapid growth. And if you're a part of a high growth SaaS company, these are very standard challenges that come with growing and scaling quickly. No different for us is that ensuring that our culture stays intact as we grow and hire quickly, and ensuring that our level of service and our client experience stays the same. We have worked so hard to establish ourselves as the only PR firm for B2B SaaS companies and have a fantastic reputation. That took 17 years to build, and it takes a lot less time than that to ruin it. So those are our biggest challenges right now, is ensuring our culture and our client service all stays intact where we want it to be. I wouldn't say it keeps me up at night. I sleep very well. I fall asleep very quickly. So it doesn't keep me up at night, but it is definitely the biggest areas of attention right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, definitely a good problem to have and focus on.
It is. Yeah. So I had to preface it. Don't people say they're like, oh, those are not real problems.
Yeah, no.
I recognize. We've been on the other end, dear listeners. Trust me, over 17 years as a agency, we have definitely had too many people and not enough clients that want to pay us. So we've experienced both ends.
Yeah. At least you're on a better side now. Great to hear. Lindsey, who or what are maybe some recommendations for some top books, mentors, or people you follow in the space who you'd say has been most instrumental to your success over these last few years?
This conversation is tough for me. I feel like I've been in a lot of, whether it's events or get-togethers where this question comes up, because I wish I had like the thing, or, you get the question of who's someone that really kept you down in life and what did you learn from it? Most of what I learned was simply through doing. I have been thrown into a lot of phenomenal opportunities, even as a teenager and a young person. But most of what I learned was honestly through doing. And, when it comes to resources, books, people, that one's tough for me because you get in this habit of reading a book and you want to take that entire framework that you've learned, whether that's leadership or management or, business strategy. You want to just take this whole framework and shove it into your company, and it never works because every company has its own unique operating system. And then you get like, well, now what? Now I'm going to try this new framework that I just read. And it just doesn't work. So it's less about a resource or a person or influencer. I take little bite-sized pieces of knowledge from many, many different sources and I test them out. So it might be something that seems super small, but I'm like, we're not doing that today. And it's a way to make our executive team function better, right? And I'll take this one little piece and I'll throw it out there and see if it sticks. I'm like, oh, that works. Or other times I'll apply a different piece of knowledge that I've read and I'm like, oh, that does not work for our organization. That's okay too. But I have been extremely fortunate that at age 25, I merged into a interview with BLASTmedia. There were two people at the time. It's our founder and our current CEO. That was it. That's what the company was comprised of. And I, from the second I walked in 17 years ago, we clicked. And I have been extremely fortunate and grateful that I still work with those two people and we still work in business together today. And they are two of my best friends. So I get to work with my best friends every day, which is incredible. And our founder, Kelly, has been an incredible mentor. You wouldn't know that he's the founder of the company. You would have no idea his other successes. When people ask him what he does at BLASTmedia, he just saw a lot of things. And so, sometimes I water the plant. Sometimes I do X, Y, Z, which are all very true. But he is a very, very humble leader. And I have learned a lot from him. One of the biggest things I learned is shut up and start listening more than you talk. But he's been a wonderful mentor to me, again, over the last 17 years, and just so incredibly lucky that I get to work with my best friends every day.
Yeah, it sounds like you got married in the business world pretty at 25. So you did figure out your your life partner at least 17.
I held a lot though of other jobs between 21 and 25. It was all over the place.
Yeah, that's all right. You found it eventually. Lindsey, what does success mean to you today? Whether that's no, it doesn't have to be by cultural perspective or standards, but whether it's personally, business, financially, life. I guess there's no right answer.
For me, it's where you wake up most days excited about the day and ready to tackle the day. Specifically from a work perspective, over this last 17 years, there are very few days, weeks where I will consistently wake up and just feel like it's too heavy today. Like or like a Monday morning, you're like, man, I don't have those feelings. And I'm excited to get home and see my kids every day. And I'm not using work as a shield from all of that life. So I feel like my cup is full at both work and life. And part of that too is just I've learned to say no to the things that don't bring me joy, that detract from the things that do. And that took a long time to figure out and put that into practice. But when you're at a point where the vast majority of the things that you're doing in your daily life bring you joy and fill up your cup, to me, that is success.
Love it. It seems like you're living that on a day-to-day basis now for the most part. Lindsey, this has been great. I think it's been lots of good value here. I appreciate you jumping on and sharing all your insights with our followers. Where can founders or anybody in the B2B SaaS space get in touch with you, learn more about you and BLASTmedia? Where's the best place?
Yeah. BLASTmedia is simply our name, blastmedia.com. You can find us across all of the social networks. And then I am Lindsey Groepper. And you can hit me up at lindsey@blastmedia.com. And that's Lindsey with the EY. And certainly connect with me on LinkedIn. It's probably the network I'm most active. So hopefully I'll hear from you all. And if anybody has any questions or wants to learn more about anything we talked about, I am happy to connect.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lindsey. We'll add all those links to our show notes if people want to reach out and say hi to Lindsey. Thank you so much.
All right.
All right.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Cheers. Thank you. Thank you all for watching this episode and joining SaaS District today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for future episodes where we interview top leaders in the SaaS industry. If you're a SaaS company looking to grow and unlock the true value of your business, get in touch with us at Horizon Capital, and myself or one of our consultants will provide a free assessment to help you get there and hit your goals. If you have any feedback or suggestions for this podcast, please comment down below and help us improve our content for you all. Thanks again, and see you on the next one.